Okay, great, everyone. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed lunch. And then you are ready for the afternoon session. So this afternoon we have two panel discussions, and we are starting the first panel discussion to talk about AI innovations for strengthening societal resilience. Of course, when we talk about societal resilience, we could talk about many different aspects. It could be about, for example, natural resources management. It could be also about financial resilience, economic growth, and also disaster risk reduction, city resilience, so on and so forth. So it could cover many different aspects. So we are very excited to hear from all the panel members different aspects of AI and societal resilience. And I'm pleased to introduce to you the panel members for this panel. It will be moderated by Dr. Linda Hill. She is Wallace Brett Donham Professor of Business Administration from Harvard Business School. She is regarded as one of the world's top experts in business leadership. She is a professor of business administration at the Harvard Business School and chair of the Leadership Initiative. Her research and consulting field focuses on leadership development, leading change and innovation, and implementing global strategies recognized globally as a thought leader. Linda published the world-renowned publication Collective Genius, which I am also following, and was named one of the top 10 management thinkers by the Thinker 50. Linda brings deep academic expertise to extensive research and consulting work in leadership and innovation. Thank you very much, Linda. Thank you. And then we have Miss Saha Abo. She is Vice President, Forum for African Women Educationalists, FAWE. Saha is the Vice President of the Forum for African Women's Educationalists and the former Vice Chair of the Governing Board of the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning and has served as the African Union Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology, where she led key initiatives in education, youth development, and science and technology. Saha is a professor of African and Commonwealth literature, and in 2019, she was named one of 100 most influential women in Africa by Avance Media. Thank you very much, Saha. And then we have Mr. Tetsuo Kondo. He is visiting professor, development and global health policy at, I'm sorry, it doesn't say which university.
Here, Tokyo, Nagasaki,
Right, okay, so he's very, very busy. So he is the former director of UNDP, United Nations Development Program, representative in Tokyo. He has held senior positions within the UN, including pivotal roles in Chad, Kosovo, and Timor-Leste, in addition to service in Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. With an with an MA in Development Studies and BA in Economics, he is currently a visiting professor in multiple prestigious universities in Japan, focusing on global health and development. Thank you very much, Tetsuo, for joining us. And we have Jae Yang So. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Chair of the Technical Committee, Global Water Partnership. Jay is the chair of the Technical Committee of the Global Water Partnership, a network with over 3,000 partner organizations to further water governance and innovation. With 30 years of experience in the World Bank Group, Jai has led impactful initiatives, including the creation of the World Bank's public-private infrastructure database. we talked a lot about data, so here you have concrete experience. She has an MBA and BA in economics from Stanford University and is recognized for her significant contributions to gender equality and global sustainable development. Thank you very much, Jay, for joining. And last but not the least, Vedan Aluwalia, founder and managing director of DataVit Technologies. Vedan is the leading expert in AI, as you all witnessed this morning. Studied under Dr. Andrew Nug at Stanford. He has contributed to EdTech, Coursera, FinTech, Earning, and supported White House tech initiatives. As founder and managing director of DataVit Technologies, he leads global AI initiative projects across sectors like healthcare and education. Vedan has also held investment roles at HSBC and BlackRock, influencing AI and tech worldwide. So we have all these distinguished speakers. So thank you very much, Linda. Over to you. You have 1 hour.
I know. What do I do? So it's certainly a pleasure to be here. I see some old friends. You're gonna wave to me or you're gonna ignore me? And I'm glad to meet so many new friends, and we have a marvelous panel here. And what we're going to try to do is, I'm gonna ask one question. We're gonna try to leave supposedly some time for the audience, so we'll try to be concise. And we had this morning a session from Vedan on the various kinds of ways AI can really help us with sustainable development. So I think I'm actually gonna start with you, if you don't mind. And what I'd just like for you to describe are 1 or 2 ideas you have as a panelist for how AI can be leveraged to strengthen societal resilience.
Very good question. And of course, as we know, AI is playing a crucial role in almost every field, and disaster.
Let me make sure, can everyone hear? We might have to speak up a little bit.
Yeah,
I apologize.
No,
Okay.
great. Thanks for getting that early. But as we know from the morning session, that artificial intelligence is playing a key role in almost every field we can imagine. Disaster management and ensuring resilience of the economy is also another area of very big impact. One involves understanding the data and the movement of various parameters, whether it's financial or transactions happening, and being able to predict whether there's a fraud in the making or there are transactions that are unseen from a certain lens. Those start getting monitored early. Currently, there are systems in place at various banks globally that are already doing this, but AI is making them more resilient and ensuring an equitable financial system for everyone. And secondly, on the disaster management side, there's significant research going into predicting earthquakes, predicting a lot of different natural disasters that can happen, ensuring recovery from those disasters as fast as possible, which is another area AI is contributing, because its ability to predict is unparalleled. It's able to understand data so well and give us precursors to many different events that can occur that allows us enough time to make the right intervention, right change, to prevent the problems that arise with any disaster. But these are just 2 areas, and in the interest of having more questions and having more involvement, I'll stop here and look forward to the next question. Thank you.
All right. Next, Jay, do you want to give your 1 or 2 suggestions about how we can use AI to improve societal resilience? Thank you.
In the water world, AI is either its biggest risk or biggest potential. And that's because of the significant water use that is happening with AI. So in order to achieve water security, AI is a huge threat. So the only way that water can actually get ahead of that AI curve is to try and see how can we deploy AI to serve the water world and the issue of water security. So when we look at the AI applications that are currently available for disaster management and so on, what we see is that the technology is there, the data is there, but are people using it? That's the biggest question. So in the floods in Europe 2 years ago, hundreds of people died in Germany because even though they had all the information that flooding was possible and imminent, they refused to leave their houses. Another risk in water security is drought. So unlike flooding, where it can happen very quickly, we can easily predict drought, because it's a very slow moving phenomenon. And yet governments are still not taking enough action to protect its citizens from the impact of drought. So for me, the biggest kind of way that AI can help is try and figure out how can we actually encourage people to use the information that AI provides.
Yes. So, and we're not using it as well as we could.
No.
Okay. Did you want to elaborate a bit on what the risk is of AI to water? Just to make sure that everybody, I don't know that everyone understands that, but I think maybe, no. So let's talk about that a minute too.
So the computer processing usage of energy and water is huge because you need a lot of water to cool those processors. So in cities in the US where I think it was Microsoft have established their computer centers. In one city in Idaho, the AI plants used 70% of the city's water availability. So that city actually has sued the company because the current laws regulating water access does not account right now for the huge water and energy needs of AI.
Yeah, I didn't know if everyone understood that, so I thought we should look at it because it was something that I remember back in 1999, when I first went to Pixar and was looking at their computers, they told me how hot they get, or at Google, and what needed to happen to cool them. So this is something that we all need to think about in our communities. When you first introduce these centers into your communities, they use a ton of your electricity and water. So thank you. Yes, one or two examples of what you thinking
Yeah,
about AI and its use.
I think the strengths of AI, two aspects. One is the inclusiveness of information and then connectivity to everyone on the planet. Another one is the real-time processing. When I was in the UNDP, we had a lot of disaster risk reduction programs. One of those was based on the experience in Japan, the earthquake in Eastern Japan, 2011. From that, the UNDP collaborated with the Tohoku University, Natural Disaster Institute. They have this huge database of when the tsunami arrived, the people, where were the people, who was saved, who was alive, who died. Those big chunk of data was used for disaster management program in developing countries in Asia, made available with the help of private sector Fujitsu. And then that provided the emergency plan when the tsunami is detected. The resident in the coastal area should go where is the safe place, where is the third place. And then we need peacetime preparation to do that. Otherwise, when the tsunami is sensed, it's too late. But real-time processing of the danger, the risk approaching is possible by AI. Another example is the health. Yeah, health is the recent experience of the pandemic. We need a lot of vaccination. Those vaccines are needed, the preservation in a very cold chain, right? -70 degrees Celsius.
Yes.
And then if somewhere, like in the country like India, the electricity is down, and then the refrigerator wasn't functional. Those vaccinations are out. You have to detect it all the time when we bring and the transport the vaccination, measuring the temperature, and then telling them to the medical professional, local, and then actually the vaccination that you have in your hand is good or bad. That AI can tell them, and even the stock is out of the stock. Then where is the remaining stock, or you can bring that stock that locked from this region. The AI can tell. So the UNDP actually use those technologies and real programs.
And there gets, I know that AI was used a lot to look at the supply chain during the pandemic to see where the materials were that were necessary to
Exactly.
make the vaccines as well as to distribute them.
Exactly.
And without AI, I'm writing a book on ecosystems, innovative ecosystems. So we followed the team that developed the Pfizer vaccine. And in 266 days, if they didn't have AI to help them map out that information, they would have never been able to do that in 266 days.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think they've said all what I needed to say.
Next time you start with it.
Are you being sneaky?
No, I'm not been sleeping.
I said no, sneaky.
Sure.
not sneaky.
So, when I look at it, particularly when you were doing your presentation, I was trying to contextualize and domesticate what we are saying to the African scenario. In the African scenario, one of the slogans of the African Union is African solutions to African challenges. How can AI facilitate, accelerate, or the development of the Africa we want, knowing fully well that we need to think about connectivity. Africa is not yet there. We need to think about energy. Africa is not yet there. But we need AI in order to fast track this development we want before 2063, because we have what we call Agenda 2063. And that Agenda 2063 is what you have as SDG 2030. So in Agenda 2063, the vision is that we need to have an integrated, peaceful, and prosperous Africa driven by its own competent and skilled citizens. 70% of Africa is a youth population. We refer to them as our demographic dividend. The bulk of these people don't live in the city. They live in the rural area. And when you speak artificial intelligence, you are speaking connectivity, you are speaking energy, you are speaking technology. And the bulk of these people who live in the rural area, how will they be able to adapt, domesticate this technology to suit what exists? And I think our very good professor now, I refer to him as Professor Emeritus, because to me, I was in class, and when they speak AI, education, I can speak very well. Technology, I'm not very sure, but I learned a lot from his presentation. So the first one is that in Africa, we can use AI to address socioeconomic challenges, African solution to African challenges by adapting, contextualizing, using the best practices of other people in order to solve our problem. Like he said, the rural farmer might not be educated, but through capacity building, he can be educated to use mechanized farming, to do mechanized agriculture. And what we have in Africa is land. 60% of arable land in the whole wide world is land in Africa. That is one. So with this, if we can do mechanized farming, if we can rethink or reshape their thinking, we can tackle poverty, we can tackle inequality, and we can tackle unemployment in Africa by optimizing the resource allocation. When people go to defend their budgets every year, and that's what I said when I was commissioner. Each year you go and you defend your budget, each ministry presents its own. What do you do with the money? Because when they ask you to bring change, you cannot bring change because you say there's no money. I don't think the problem in Africa is there's no money. I think the ideas are not there. So the political will needs to move, and that is what you said, that the elected officials need to be educated, sensitized to know the power of AI in order to transform the world. And with this, we can also predict economic trends and identify opportunities that we can use. The other one is what you said about improving healthcare. You know, when you were saying, I was just saying to myself that improving healthcare, my mother died because of anesthetic error. In 2016, she was given anesthesia and they could not intubate her, and she died on the operation table with very painful death. Now, when we talk about this AI, you said something that kept me thinking. And I think I was discussing with one of them who said, okay, he's no longer there. And I was saying, if we need to certify, if we need to validate whatever goes into it, when we were trying that one on the robotics, it was human beings were controlling it. But they can make mistakes. And in Africa, we are not to that standard where people are held for killing people, in quotes. Yeah, because there are so many errors, but doctors do this and they get away. Do that in the US, you'll be banned for life. We are not yet there. How do we make sure that such mistakes will not take place? It is education. It is sending them the brain gain. Sometimes it would be good to bring the brain gain, the African brain gain. I don't use the word brain drain, but I see them as African brain drain to come back and give back to Africa, even if they come and teach in our universities for 1 month. That experience they are bringing will help us. And often that education will be transformed because remote learning can come into place for some in the universities. But even with that, you have to think about the financial output to get connectivity. So the other aspect is that my great grandmother or my grandmother can look at the sun like this and tell you in 2 hours it's going to rain, isn't it? Yeah. It is predicting the times. But now with AI, you said something that actually intrigued me. AI can detect the sickness I might have in the next 5 years and begin the treatment 5 years before the sickness. That's what we call witchcraft. That is what we call witchcraft. Ability to know what others do not know. And then you say, but whatever it is in AI is treated by men. You feed it in by yourself. So for me, AI can empower local communities. It can facilitate community engagement, particularly in language preservation. Right now, our own generation, many of our kids don't speak our ethnic language anymore because all what we do at home is to speak English, speak French, speak Spanish, speak Arabic. Where is your ethnic language? Your identity is found in your ethnic language. My name is Sarah Anyang Agbo. Anyang Agbo is located in my ethnic group. Go to Cameroon and say you are looking for Anyang Agbo. They will tell you that it's found in the southwest. Get to the southwest. They will tell you that is a Bayang name. Go to the Bayang area and you can get right to my compound. You see, that is why you need to call me by my rightful name. You know, Sarah Anyang Agbo. Okay. The seat of Kwebo wrote that. And it can also foster regional cooperation because it will enhance collaboration among African countries. In the African continent, we have 5 regions, but we call them 6 regions because we have the north, the south, the west, the center, the east, and the African diaspora. The African diaspora, whether of Australia, Canada, US, Europe, they consider the 6th region of Africa. So we can address unique African challenges because we can tackle issues like wildlife poaching, desertification, informal settlement, which are very, very prevalent in Africa. I think I should stop here. Thank you.
So lots of different ideas. You were inspired. And one of the things I actually did want to come back to all of you is we talked this morning, we had the privilege of those of us who were here, about how important it is to make sure that we actually build the capacity to use AI locally so that countries, parts of countries, et cetera, can actually, instead of selling their data to US companies, if you will, or European companies, use your own data to actually solve your own problems because you know them very well. So I am actually looking at an organization, African Food Changers, that actually is using AI to use for farmers, and also in India, a local example to improve primary education. But one of the things that I know we wanted to be able to talk about is what are the funding models that might be necessary? I'm jumping ahead here a bit. The funding models that can help us make sure that AI is used in an inclusive way to address the kinds of challenges and opportunities we actually have in different settings, different countries, different regions. Anybody, any funding ideas about that or how that should happen?
There are actually lots of funding ideas. And essentially currently how funding is playing a bigger picture in artificial intelligence is that there are corporates with problems where they're kind of putting the budgets through for innovation challenges and different things across India. There are investors looking at startups that can generate large value in the future. I mean, OpenAI was funded by Elon Musk when he just had a paper plan, a couple of $1 billion. And I mean, that's not a joke. And even at Elon Musk level or Stanford level, that is pretty big for a first-time funding. And he's gone out to ask 7 trillion as per media reports for his next round. So, I mean, that is where AI's value is still underestimated. Its value is enormous because the scale of impact that can be there is so much that even countries now, India is trying to develop their own AI mission. They're getting their own servers, own data sets and passing it forward. Let's start innovating. So there are multiple models possible. And what I was telling Michael and someone else I met recently as well, is the idea, the vision that you have to put in place. Funding will follow, it will come. Because the opportunity is so vast and the costs involved in building AI are not that significant. But we're not talking about fundamental model. We don't want to go build our own ChatGPT or build some resource intensive model. We want to build our applications that can solve real world problems that are already having customers or having people that are facing challenges where they'll be willing to pay for it. So I think the bigger issue is not the funding. It's more about setting the vision right. The funding will follow. There are global development banks. If you're able to state your vision correctly, they will fund this because this solves the problem at a much bigger scale. So I think like what Map said clearly is that once the leadership vision changes and they want to do this, there is no force in the world that can stop them from achieving their goals and their excellence. And it really has to start from within, where each country's leadership starts figuring out which problems, guiding their local innovation centers to start working on them, and then channelizing them across related territory where they can benefit people faster. Of course, overlapping development can be avoided if there's group collaboration, but ensuring that all our problems are tackled in the minimal amount of time is essential, because the more time we waste in status current, is more time we're wasting without the benefits of AI. So the faster we move, the better we move, is ensuring a better equitable life for all.
So
Yes.
I agree with half of your statement and disagree with half of your statement. So for the purpose of kind of this panel discussion, I think the fact that there is current funding from kind of private investors is a great thing for AI. But all the recent analysis about the funding coming from these groups shows that it is not at all inclusive. It is really going towards a very small, specific demographic group. So women are not getting funding, people of color are not getting funding, and so on. So I do think that there is a need for a national or government-led investment funding program. Israel did this very well a couple of years ago when they called themselves a startup nation. So they built an ecosystem of investment funding that has now, you've seen the dramatic results of all these Israeli-led startups. So in the GWP, we did a program last year called the Water Changemakers Awards, where we sent out a call to 150 countries for small and medium companies that are able to innovate on water. And what was quite interesting is that there were actually some very common themes in the innovations that came from all these small and medium companies. So AI-led water monitoring, water sensing, and so on was good, and it was coming from China, Africa, India, and so on. But we found a very interesting company that was coming from Botswana. They had exactly the same idea as a small and medium company coming from the US. The US company had already raised $50 million in investment capital from BlackRock, Gates Foundation, and a number of other investment funds. The African company couldn't access any funding at all. So one of the things that GWP did was that we also partnered with venture capitalists, including African venture capitalists. So when we pitched them, the way that venture capitalists work is if somebody else has already invested, then that gives them a lot of comfort. So, okay, BlackRock put in 50 million, it's probably a safe investment for me. So all the venture capitalists immediately wanted to invest in the American company. But we met with a couple of the African-led venture capitalists and we said, look, there's this company. And we told them about it. And they said, well, we'd rather invest in our own. So they actually decided to change their investment and went in with the African company. So I think, everywhere in the world, young people do have these ideas. The question is there an ecosystem that can actually support and nurture those great ideas?
And sorry, I just wanted to look into what she has said. That is one of the biggest problems found in Africa. Not being able to have credibility, but one, to get donors to work with you. When I was commissioner, I partnered with one, I will not call the name. I partnered with one UN, just like UNITAR, UNESCO. I'm not calling the one that I did it. And
Only up.
yes, all the others. And I had to go to Rome to defend them, to help us in the homegrown school feeding, which is one of the policies of the African Union. And Dubai Care gave us 4.2 million. The moment that money went to that UN agency, they never contacted us. Until I told them that if you don't bring in the African Union, which you use to get this funding, I'm going to go online. And I will tell the bike head that you have not fulfilled what you were supposed to do with us. Funding. There's another instance, because these are instant real life scenarios, is that there is one they called African Renaissance. African Renaissance is subcontracted by and is supposed to be working for yeah.
We'll talk after.
Yes. And then they get the biggest funding and they give just 5% to African Renaissance to do the job that they need to do. That is not fair. But it is all these issues. Like if you were not there to speak for that company in Botswana, it will never have had those resources. And you know, for me, I used to say in my head that if you want to give money to do something in Africa, why do you do it to a non-African organization? It's always been my point of view. Why? Because it's the person who wears the shoes that knows where it pinches. Now, what foreign donors often want is that they want you to domesticate their own ideas and implement it. When I went to the science forum, I said, when you speak about the fourth industrial revolution, Africa is not yet there because connectivity we don't have, energy we do not have. We even, the first, second industrial revolution, are we even there? We are not there, we're not yet there. So we should not run more than our shadows. So we cannot domesticate what you want. We want to domesticate what is our problem using your best practices to move. Can you imagine that Switzerland produces chocolate, the best in the world? I hope I'm not wrong. And I'm in Switzerland, I have to be careful. Yeah, careful. But they don't produce cocoa. Do you understand that? They don't produce cocoa, but they have the best chocolate in the world. Why? So why is it that we cannot come and learn their own best practices and then produce, like for me, I will speak Mambo all my life. Mambo is our own chocolate. I'm sorry, I don't have a sample to show you. I will have brought a sample. Mambo is what we produce here. But you know, the sign of wealth that you have traveled when you are coming from here is to carry packets of chocolates to go and give to your friends back home. One thing that is wrong with Africa is that we do not know how to sell ourselves, one. Secondly, we're not proud of what we have. Because you see, the wealth of the world is from Africa. I'm not speaking colonialism. I'm just being objective. I'm a professor. I'm just saying what I know. Can you imagine that 35% of diamond in the whole wide world is found in Africa? But it's not used for Africa. Because our own very leaders, they are selling us. They sell what we have, and then they cry that the white man, it's not the white man, it's the black man. You know that Kwame Nkrumah said, I am not an African because I am born in Africa. I am an African because Africa is born in me. I have seen people in white collar who are more African than my brothers and sisters who are African. I've seen my cousins who are in the US referring to me as you Africans, and I'm shocked. Coming from your own blood, referring to you as you Africans. So the ball point is that if we can use this artificial intelligence to teach indigenous knowledge and values that are positive, because there are some indigenous knowledge and values that are not positive, that are positive, there can be a beginning of a change in the psyche. It is Bob Marley, I hope it's Bob Marley, who sang, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Don't put ourselves and free ourselves. Nobody can free you except you free yourself, because salvation is what? Personal.
Thank you. So. No, you get the follow. You get the follow. Yeah.
Yeah, Sarah, you are very right that the indigenous value is very important asset for human beings that were underused so far. I think since I was appointed to this UNITAR prosperity board, and I had several discussions with the frontline philosophers and Marx Gabriel, the German young philosopher, came to Japan and we had a discussion. His point is that ethical capitalism could be the new kind of funding model of our sustainability. And his point is that when the company really thinks about the sustainability of the planet, the climate change, they really need to invest more than before. Because before the economics theory is on the production, it can be done by labor and capital. But what about environment? What about the air? What about the water? So the production for the sustainability really comes from this new value added of the supply chain. If the company is well run by ESG, gender equality, human rights, due diligence, that should cost, but that is a necessary cost. And when the consumer looks at this supply chain, that is properly, I think the value of this sustainability, go for it. If you're cheaper one, doesn't care about that. If you buy that, your credit will be enough. That kind of, the ethical capitalism idea is a very good approach. And also for this climate change, the COP discussion on the climate justice things, already 550 billion US dollars or deposited to the Green Climate Fund. It's a huge money. And in addition, there should be the justice. Somebody has to pay for it. So that we need to review our lifestyle and the production style, and then reformulate our value chain. So that is a important approach that I think. The another one is the health. Our experience of the COVID. Until everybody is safe, got shot, nobody is safe. So that idea really provides us with a new funding model in the future to avoid fatal consequences of the pandemic.
So when I listen to all of you, so there's a role for the private sector to play in making sure that we actually have the resources we need to fund AI in a more local way. And there's also a need for government, from what I'm understanding. And there's needless to say, there's a point of view. People have different points of view about exactly how capitalism should work, and it operates very differently in a whole range of countries. But figuring out, I think you're reminding of our interdependencies. So the pandemic reminded us of how small the planet really is. And the question is, are we going to really pay attention to that and move forward? I want to ask, I'm going to change the conversation a little bit. One of the things I know I'm responsible at Harvard Business School for helping executives understand what they need to know about AI. Now, don't ask me to define AI for you at the moment. I can do it for a little while and then I get a little confused, but I actually get it. I mean, I understand what it's about. But one of the things we keep talking about is we need to educate people locally to actually have the capacity to know what they need to know to develop their own AI solutions. And one of the comments that you made in your conversation with us is we don't need developers, we need thinkers. So I'm still trying to figure out, what do people need to know? Because as you pointed out to us, soon the prompt engineers will go away. AI, depending on who you talk to, it's kind of at its adolescence. It's been around for a long time. The one thing I want to add in terms of what do people need to know, one of the executives I've been working with, I think this is not necessarily original, he doesn't use the words artificial intelligence. He uses augmented intelligence, very much about human plus AI to solve problems that we want to have solved. And we've got to figure out a pace. But what does it mean that we need thinkers and not developers? What do we all need to be learning so that we can actually do our part in helping develop these AI solutions? I'm still struggling with what digital literacy means, particularly with regard to AI.
Very good question, but I would want, I think the other three panelists.
Yes, all of us,
to
yeah.
message, then I'll talk about it, because I'll cover a lot of the questions they honor if they haven't.
Okay, so you'd rather somebody else start? Who would like?
May I come first?
Yes, you may go first. Yeah.
Yeah, this morning discussion. So thank you so much. It was very insightful. And then my question about this, liability and responsibilities legally taken by AI or not. I asked actually my ChatGPT, do you take a responsibility when the machine was damaged? He said no. Yeah. But you know, the AI is learning every minute, every second, right? So that maybe that to our later, the AI may say different. So that's what AI is
Yes.
about. And then we should imagine that this you know, difference and distance between AI and the human being brain will be narrowing in the future. Of course, the legal responsibility cannot be taken by AI, but the capacity and nature will be becoming more similar and similar. And then, you know, there's some researcher tried to test the emotion of the AI, and he was successful.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, I was asked to write an article for a Korean publication on would AI replace human ingenuity? I think that was the question that I wrote my article about that. Won't say what I I said, no, I didn't think so for quite some time, if ever. But again, what do we all need to understand and know, or what are we going to help our young people understand, or older people, whoever it is, that they need to know so they can use these tools responsibly, as you're bringing up, and effectively. And that piece of the puzzle I'm still struggling with. Now, the other part of it, and the reason why I bring this up very much about the conversation, it turns out you give people data and half the time they don't use it. So that's a whole other issue, how you get people to actually adopt. And part of it is they don't trust the data or the way we try to introduce change, et cetera. But what do you think we should be educating people about? I don't know if it's teaching when you're talking about a thinker as opposed to a developer, but what do we want people to be learning about this so that we'll be prepared?
I'm giving a lecture, just last word lecture to my students is that, you know, you should be smarter than AI. To pose in the question, how smart your question is.
How smart your question is.
Yes, to ask AI, so your performance will be supported by AI.
Okay, we all have to figure out how to interview so we can tell how smart people's questions are. So we hire the right people. Yeah.
So actually, it's a very similar experience that we've had. Because of the issue of water scarcity, SDG 6 is badly off track. And because of the huge consumption of water, a lot of AI firms have approached us and said, we want to help you to support countries to bring water security. Just tell us what's your question and we can analyze the heck out of it. So these companies don't know what the question is. And the question can only be asked by somebody who needs the answer. The reason that these private companies are doing so well on AI is because they have a very clear answer that they want. What's the product that's going to give me the biggest profitability? The similar social question on water security, who's asking that question? Is it the government? Is it the person in the house? Everybody will have a different question. So I think the key thing in AI is, who are you asking the question? Who is asking the question of AI? And what is that question? Because it'll be different depending on who is the questioner. The example on farming, actually, if you want the most efficient farming in the world, you will hand it over to large corporations because they're going to be 1,000 times more productive than smallholder farmers. So what is the real purpose of governments of keeping these smallholder farms going? Because if you ask any smallholder farmer, all their kids want to go to the city. Nobody wants to be a farmer in the next generation because they see more opportunity there. I mean, is it possible that one of the reasons to keep the smallholders farmers going is for political reasons? Because farmers vote and that will get you elected. So I think one of the questions about AI and the applications that are being used right now is to really understand who's asking that question to AI and what is the real purpose? What is the end vision of the society that we want? And will AI help us get there? If your end vision is the most efficient, productive society, that's not necessarily the happiest society. It's not necessarily an inclusive society. So I think one of the questions is, can we help governments to figure out what is the question we need AI to answer?
Yes. So for sure, this sounds like, well, there are any number of issues that you raised, but how you educate people to know what the right questions are. And then you're asking us all to begin to agree on, once we have these questions, what points, the various stakeholders, how are we going to reconcile that? And that's about how you negotiate and find that common ground.
And how can we give access to AI to those questions that need to be asked?
Yep. And make sure, so, yes.
Should I go now?
Yes.
Would you like to add?
Yes, so the question is, what do people need to know about AI so that we need to know what to do with AI?
Yeah,
Is that the
so,
question?
so the question is, so as an example, so I am responsible for our leadership course for senior executives on digital. And we had 5 sessions on AI. AI specialists presented these 5 sessions. We had a bit of a lab too, so they could try their hands at using AI. Because this augmented intelligence, let's see how these different systems, what different answers you get. And so I think part of it is you do have to use it to have some sense of it. And I presume all the people, I'm writing an article on digital natives, whatever those are. Digital natives use AI all the time to do various things and to test out whatever. But I've been trying to figure out, what do people really need to know? It almost like you need to be liberally educated to understand broadly interdependencies, et cetera, so you can ask the right questions with regard to development. But I don't know, you're teaching courses and designing courses in India for people to know about AI so they can participate. What are they learning?
Specifically, there are multiple layers in AI learning. One is the base layer, which we call as giving you, a solution for now, but then that solution will not be relevant in time to come. It's like small plugins, like learn prompt engineering. Once the algorithms change, learn another course of prompt engineering. So you are not teaching them how to solve the problem for time to come. You're just giving them a solution for now, you move forward, then again, you come back to it and keep moving forward. Temporary solutions. Second is bigger solutions of understanding how the systems work. Once you understand how the artificial intelligence works, how it thinks, what are shortcomings, what you have to look at in a system, how do you evaluate whether it's right for you or not, these skills go a long way. The systems are changing, but the process underlying nature is not changing. And AI itself is just one additional tool for us to achieve our goals. Our goals, our critical thinking, our vision is still ours. AI is not going to decide the vision for us. We are going to decide it. AI will help us achieve it. It's going to be our assistant. And in a world without AI, it would take us many lifetimes to achieve something. With AI, we can achieve it faster. So which are the areas we should apply AI? Where should we not? How do we ensure AI does not have bias and is working correctly? What am I giving to an AI as part of using it? What data is going through? These are bigger questions that almost everyone should be aware of. Because in a certain way, cameras are taking your data everywhere.
Yes.
And depending on which camera you have, it's going to a certain country. And then they're lost against that data. They're understanding your behavior. Google Maps has the data on your travel if you accept that feature, so they know where you go every day, when you go, when you don't. So these are questions that are being asked in the US government to these companies. What are you doing with that data? Have you taken consent and other things? But other countries are not understanding it as well. So it is crucial to develop an understanding of this future world that's coming around us. And this is a world that's being collectively planned as long as we have collective intelligence about what is coming. If there are only few people planning it for us, there might not be the world that's best for all, like some people mentioned. And that is where I think crucial knowledge of operating an AI does not mean prompt engineering it, but understanding how the prompts are being made. What is the underlying data? And a lot of bigger questions in that. Secondly, understanding how the systems are built. What is the process? What does it take? You don't have to build it, but making a POC is not too far. If people are able to use AI to write Python code, AI to code, then it's not too difficult to make a pilot and see if it's a feasible solution or not. Understanding what people need, critical thinking, whether the solution in AI is needed or not, or whether it will solve the problem or not. There's so many vanity solutions that are being built by big tech companies that don't see light, because they don't understand the problem as well. Like she mentioned, that the problem is really needed. And these sort of skills are going to be the allied critical thinking skills, which will be a lot of the roles, right? From AI manager, going to be a very crucial skill. Can you manage a company when you don't understand what it does?
No, so these critical thinking skills makes me think, I'm feeling good about my liberal education.
Yeah.
I suppose that, because that seems to be where you kind of learn those critical thinking skills, to be perfectly honest, and I don't know if that's what's really going on in some of these programs. Actually, how many of you in the audience actually use AI on a pretty regular basis? Generative AI, I guess, AI has been pretty, so many of you use it on a fairly regular basis. So what are some of the, we need to have some, we only have 10 minutes left. I just wanted to check and see, what are your questions? I mean, there's both, how do you do this effectively? How do you do this responsibly? But those of you who use it, anything you want to warn the rest of us about, or what your sense is? Yes.
Hi, I'll try to be quick. My name is Mario. To understand the essence of my question, a quick background. Because I come from the Philippines, and because of my love for the Philippines, I served in the military for 10 years, almost died twice. Because of my love for my family, I moved to Switzerland. Because of my love for technology, I started working in IT 11 years here. And I have 3 years of master's in data science from University of Michigan. I tried an experiment a year and a half ago. I called for about 100 fellow data scientists from the Philippines to use data science to help address a simple societal problem in the Philippines, which was earthquakes. We started with 100. A year and a half later, we did our POCs. We were able to come up with proof of concepts, but I started losing people because I didn't have funding. It was an all volunteer team. We're down to 6 people. For people like me, founders, or people who are potentially thinkers or viewers on the call or watching, who have an idea that they want to use AI for good, how do you go about, or how do you recommend folks like us address this kind of situation where it's a bottom up, where we're trying to bring innovative ways? I really like the panelists, the way you're thinking, and I believe this is a once in a lifetime question that I'll never get a chance to ask all of you. That's why I really have this essence of important that I want to ask this question is, what would you advise folks like us that, we love our country like the way you mentioned, you also love Africa. We don't have funding like the way you mentioned as well. What do we do? I'm just curious, how do we go about getting support? Or if we do have thinkers and we do have people who have the knowledge?
I think she mentioned a very good point in this previous area where I think the governments, as they're adapting, I mean, India has their own fund for investing in startups and other things where they're supporting people with different backgrounds to even take initial funding on idea, to take it forward. And that's where the innovative mindset and governance is crucial, which is again what Ma'am had mentioned, where the leaders need to understand the value of this technology. And that's where countries then start innovating internally. So having the labs and innovating locally is one thing, but having the government vision and seeing what's happening is actually the collective growth approach. So you can do it the current way, which is you set up your company in US and kind of try to funnel a global change, which is possible now. There are lots of investors across India, US that are looking in global markets. But that's your role, where you find the investor, get them involved. And be a lot of people on the panel that be willing to invest. So you find the right people that want to work with you in your vision and mission. You take them along to support this. Or second is a systemic government level change where they start valuing innovation. US has done this from a long time. Innovation is valued, that's why it's championed. And that's where I think learning, using it in other countries can be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, and also, the investing world is fairly global right now. And I'll tell you a secret that I learned when we were doing this competition. Venture capital firms are desperate to find good ideas. So they are looking for people to present ideas to them. So when we went, we are a water organization. We don't hang out with venture capitalists very often. So we started just making cold calls, saying we're having this competition to find innovation from 150 countries. Would you be willing to, join us? Yes, yes, yes. Almost every single company said yes, because it's their job to go out and look for investments. And if our organization is going to get all the investments and present it to them, it's, we're doing part of their job. So as much as you can to try and get into these kind of systems where you can be part of the feed of projects. Now, once you get into that feed, of course, they have very clear and strict ways that they evaluate. So you could get weeded out in the first like 90%, but you need to get into that system first. So look for those types of opportunities.
Yeah, one of the ones X Prize,
Yeah,
those kinds of challenges. And actually, that, I mean, there are lots of them, and VCs are desperate.
Yeah.
Right now, they have so much money and no place to invest. The problem is, you're not necessarily credible, which is why you want to get into one of these challenges, going back to what was described here, which countries or whatever, but this is a time for that. But the challenge is, I've seen a fair number of startups that do AI for good, for instance, who've gone through X Prize, and where Davos also has a challenge. NASA, there are these challenges, and in fact, I don't know which ones would be about earthquakes, but they do exist, and that is one of the ways in which you can get access. But I think none of us would, needless to say, raising money is a really hard thing to do, even though there is this, there's a shortage of good deals at the moment. So deal flow is the major. VCs don't know what to do, and all the private equity funds have gotten into VC work, and so there's really not just VC. We go to private equity funds and see which ones are actually doing venture work. Yes, I'm sorry. I just wanted to kind of can I grab this? Yes. I'm sorry. I don't know your name, of course.
I'm using AI to prepare my statements during the Human Rights Council. All session and with all items, and it's very useful. But lately, I have something like observation. I think especially ChatGPT is getting human. It gave me attitude. I have
It's a teenager, as I said. Yes.
I asked the same question twice, and it said, "I told you, human, we can sense anger. So there is any danger on us?"
That are choosing to learn.
Interface question.
I'll give a similar anecdote. So there was one person that was using ChatGPT, and he was asking a simple math question that 2 + 2 is 4 or is it 5? So ChatGPT said it's 4. Then he got that answer, but he said that my wife said this 5, and ChatGPT said no, it's 4. Then he said, but my wife is always right. And then ChatGPT said, okay, then the answer is 5. You're right. So I'm able to
In awareness, I mean, one of the things about, and just to, I'm sorry, did I?
It's okay, no.
Oh, no. The one thing that one of the wonderful things about being a professor is you get to wander about. And Harvard Business School is right next to MIT. So they have a free pizza night for the AI doctoral students. And somehow I got invited. I'm the oldest person there and I can't sit on the floor with them the way they do. But I go to these because the graduate students are presenting what they're working on, what they find interesting about AI. So I can sort of have some sense of seeing what the cutting edge is. One of the things that's become very clear to me is how the data that are being used to build these models are not particularly inclusive. So they'll come up with solutions, and I sometimes go with a man who's Latino, and we'll look at those solutions and say they didn't use any data from the Black community or the Latino community, because these solutions don't represent us. Everybody else in the room is real excited about them, but the two of us are like, they don't speak to us. So I think one of the other things why we all need to be involved in this is to make sure, and this is South data, whatever, don't sell your data to anybody. Your data is valuable, and make sure you know who has it. But a lot of these models that are being developed right now are being developed with really limited data, frankly, data from the North. And at MIT, who goes to MIT? And that's why I don't know where they go to get it. But the other piece, when I'm thinking, why is it talking back to you? But it is the data that it's being fed that it's learning on. The other thing that I think we really just need to say is and I'm not a sophisticated person about this, but this whole issue of how AI hallucinates. So the fact of the matter is, you do want to be making data-informed decisions, not data-driven decisions, because AI is only as good as the data that the models that were used to develop it. And you do need to ask questions about who developed the model. That's why it's very important that we have a diverse set of people working on these models, thinking about where the data came from, what data we need to have, because it's, bad data, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
But I do think it's learning. And be very careful when you're doing this, and I may be speaking to people who really understand this, make sure your data is not going out into the general public. Right, you want to keep it in your own sandbox until you want it to be shared with the other model, with the building of the models. So to those of us who are in organizations that actually have a place where we can play, we don't have to worry about our data getting out into the larger system, particularly when you're trying to build businesses and get the VCs to invest in you. But I do think it's really important that all of us do learn to use it and to practice with it and ask really hard questions about who came up with these models, where did you get the data for these, and make sure that do you have anything from the South? South engagement in the development of these AI models, critical. So we need people from the South who have the skills to develop the models and who can ask hard questions, because the people at MIT are very well intended. I'm sure they're very intended and want to do AI for good. They're just not even aware of what's not there, right? And how the solutions don't speak to everyone. They just literally don't know. They're not bad people. So we all have to get in the room, eat our pizza, do what's necessary. We got 5 minutes, so we have a couple more. You have a comment you wanted to make? We have a couple
I
more
was
questions.
just going to refer to the question on funding.
Yeah.
That you could talk about corporate social responsibility. Because many companies in your country have, in my country, it is 2% social responsibility. Because I used that to raise funds for my university when I was vice chancellor, deputy vice chancellor. I met those companies and I gave them my need analysis. That this is what we need. How much can you give us? Because they have a duty to give that corporate social responsibility. Then again, these grants and competitions, you can form a consortium. Instead of you going in alone, but I've even seen examples of UNICEF working with UNESCO to get a grant from maybe GPE to get donor contribution. That's another way to work with them. And then thinking like them, thinking what they need. Because if you can get a company to have social impact in your country, then you write your project to tailor that social impact that country is going to do. They will sponsor it. And it's not easy to start. Once you get one, you fly.
Other thoughts? Yes.
Just wanted to add, in response to our question on whether the real danger is that AI can escape human control. That's the fact that they can change their own cognitive load, which means that they can modify themselves. And this is a real danger. It's like the AI. That's the only point where humans will no longer have control over AI, but it's AI that will actually control.
Someone who is an expert about this should answer, but there's so many questions we don't know about how it works. The question in part, I understand, what does it do when it doesn't have data? That's what hallucination, when it doesn't have data to answer a question you've asked, it's going to give you an answer. It's going to do some stuff. And from what I understand from these MIT students, they don't really know what the logic is of what it does when it doesn't have the data to come up with an answer. So I don't know, but you can, it gives you and you don't necessarily know, but if you can answer the question of whether it is generative, but
It's
can I get it?
generative, but how current systems work is they predict the next best word and they kind of work from there. So they're also really not understanding as well as us what they're saying.
Yeah.
So that idea of saying that he's understood and he's joking around with me is like a joke because they're just trying to predict the word. And imagine if you were just predicting the next word, what's best suited based on the data, you would not really be knowing what you're answering. So similarly, it doesn't know. And the aspect you mentioned about the man in the middle for AI, most development systems that are happening right now are man in the middle. We're not looking at sentient AI or general AI, like you're mentioning, that works on multiple tasks at the same time as current. It's not part of our goal. It's part of our long-term goal, about 50, 100 years. But right now, the idea is to have people really policing the data, people policing the outcomes, ensuring the data and answers are correct. And one skill that comes with ChatGPT is knowing that ChatGPT can be wrong.
Yes.
It is not always right. It hallucinates, it gives wrong answers. So you have to be critical of the answer. And if it's wrong, then you double check it on Google. And if Google's wrong, then you check it in the library. You have to have fallback systems to ensure it's correct. And that's where you cannot be dependent on it, but you can use it judiciously to work your answers faster. So that is where there's a big involvement of humans in ensuring the right systems come to play. And talking about AI controlling everything is still long, far fantasy. We're not even close to having general AI. which is AI to do all the tasks we can do. We're only very specific tasks right now, which is communicating, seeing a couple of things, and that innovation will take a long time. Of course, people are having visions that may happen because of the media, where the Terminator has come and other things have come. There's some movies about where AI does the self-coding, which you're talking about. I've seen that, but that is imagination that's driving that conception. But current systems are not geared for AI to just self-innovate, change the code and move forward. We've not created sentient agents that will start doing that change.
You gotta worry about it, you know, it's supposed to be here before we go, I guess, but I think in that sense, I mean, I think it's worth thinking through all the scenarios, worst case scenarios, best case scenarios. And what the probabilities of those and how do we prepare? Yes.
So this concern is actually expressed by the creators themselves. But that's the role of governments, you know, that's the importance of government AI, it's not because now in order to reach that goal.
Yeah, and we have to all use it enough to understand, you can't tell you can't govern something that you haven't used a little bit, right? So not that you're gonna use it completely, but I do think it is worth playing around with it a bit to have a sense of it, and it'll evolve faster than we think, and so asking these questions are very legitimate questions to ask. We did in our session, we had one person who talked about sort of AI as utopia, and the other person talked about AI as, you know, disaster. We had two different purposefully. So then what is the probability of the, you know, one or the other happening? And we did sort of do that. We had different points of view about it. So I think, you know, science is only as good as how we use it, and technology is only as good as how we use it. So those questions, those critical questions are imperative. Was there another hand? Yes. Am I looking in the wrong? Okay. Here, I'm gonna look here, then I'm gonna come back to you because I keep looking over
Yeah,
here.
that's-
Okay, yes, sir.
I liked your question about the funding element and really interesting answers just about the board. One of the challenges always when we're talking about SDGs or we're talking about these big investments, is you have a little, it's a market failure in some ways, right? Why are we looking for $7 trillion in funding? Why were people looking for 50 million to invest in a Silicon Valley-based company rather than Botswana? Because they want to get their profit driven, right, as companies. And so I guess my question or the challenge that I see is, particularly when we're talking about the focus on these sustainable development goals, you have your social corporate responsibility, which is one track, but is there another way to kind of reconcile this idea of corporate profit so that they are still the most efficient producers, whether it's in agriculture or tech, et cetera, but in a way that can also add value to what we're trying to do sustainably throughout the world? Or do you see that as always being kind of a give and take, and one where you're going to have this natural, let's say, contradiction or this natural challenge in order to rectify to reconcile?
Let me let the panelists answer. The one thing that I have seen companies do, or organizations do, that are trying to do these things for good, is they think short-term and long-term. So even though their long-term goal might be something that's about sustainability, they also come up with a solution that can be used by that business right now to do something. So this is not a social good one, don't know why it's coming to my mind. Working with JAXA in Japan, this company is working to get, you know, to work in the space industry, but most companies are not really investing in the space industry. But if you can get something to work in outer space, then it can actually help you in dangerous areas, like when there's been a tsunami or if you're in a mine. So what these individuals, these entrepreneurs do is they know what their long-term goal is and what they're about, but investors are not that long-term in their point of view. So they also look at what's the problem that can be solved in the short and medium term. But I know, and I'm going to stay focused on where I'm really headed with this. So there is that combination that really a lot of tech companies rely on, who are trying to do something that's a long-term play. But you got to show the investors in the short and medium term how they're going to get what their return is going to be. Because they may not be interested in your long-term goal, but they are interested in those short-term goals.
Maybe, that example of the Japan Jackson. I think their success came from the idea of, you know, putting the options always. Even though the goal is long-term and global, individual consumer, you know, the investor have the option. Go this way or that way.
Yep.
Then, the accumulation of those, individual decision making will develop the big movement of the human beings. But we have to translate that process to every individual. That's the role of United Nations, UNITAR.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I think we have to be very pragmatic about it, which is that the way that our economic system is set up right now, and those are the incentives that the public sector and the private sector go for, right? So SDG 6 is what I know the most about, and the sanitation target is badly off track. So Bill Gates, trying to contribute his wealth for good, convened a team of the top of the world's scientists and say, sanitation is such an easy goal. Why are there 2 billion people in the world that still don't have it? And these scientists said, Bill, it's not about the machine. It's about behavior change. And so Bill Gates has now donated hundreds of millions of dollars now into sanitation. And I just read in the paper today that they have decided to change their funding portfolio. So now they're going to go for a technology solution to sanitation. And I think that's a very significant shift, which is it takes $7 trillion thinking about it the way that we know how to solve that SDG. But technology has caused us to change our behaviors in ways that we never predicted. I don't wear a watch anymore because I use my phone. I don't even carry a mirror to put my lipstick on because I use my phone, right? And so what Bill Gates is saying is, are there new ways of doing sanitation, which is not building hundreds of kilometers of pipes? He even convened a $1 million toilet of the future competition to say, we don't need water to flush toilets. There were chemical engineers that you could burn it and so on. So I can't say now which is the better way, but I think the way that regulation works is a big part of that. And I think one of the interesting things is, as you mentioned, human creativity. I think that's something that right now AI cannot own. And the recent strike by the Screenwriters Guild of Hollywood,
Yeah.
I think that they try to put a value on that human creativity, or at least not to give it away.
Yes.
So I think that kind of core message, we are giving our data away freely for AI, but we have to recognize that there is a value to that data. And I think some of the governments, like the EU, that have that regulation are actually doing a good job in protecting their people. Not every country has that data regulation. The US, we don't, right?
I know.
We're just giving it away free to Facebook every time I click on it. So, yeah. So I think this data protection, data usage regulation is, those are some of the kind of ways that we want to think about that.
Well, I think our time is up, and I hope the panel gave you food for thought. I'm sorry I did not get to your question, so we'll make sure the moderator gets to you next time. But we appreciate your attention, and we have a little break, or what happens next?
Yes, we
Okay.
have a 15 minutes break. So now it's 2:47, so you can come back 5 minutes after 2. That would be fantastic.
So thank you, panel. Would you take?
Specifically on anti-corruption, transparency, prevention of crimes, particularly financial crimes. So how could we use AI to make progress on this area, which is significantly behind, unfortunately. So I am happy to invite distinguished panel members. So introduction. So Mr. Michael Horst, Dean of School of Business and Management, City University of Seattle. He is former executive leader at Boeing. His work focuses on business transformation and workforce development in the fourth industrial revolution. Previously, he was an executive leader at Microsoft, leading digital transformation initiatives. Michael has also served as Chief Learning Officer at Intel University and teachers at Stanford, Columbia, and the University of Washington. He is chairman of the advisory board of UNITAR Prosperity Division. Thank you very much. And a member of several global organizations. So Michael is going to be the moderator for panel session 2. And we have Ashley, Miss Ashley Owens, Deputy Director, Financial Institutions Lead. She is a senior advisor she is Deputy Director at Shift, New York-based nonprofit helping companies ensure respect for human rights. She leads Shift work with financial institutions, promoting markets that reward human dignity. Previously, Ashley was executive director at EY, Ernst & Young. Yes, okay, in Tokyo, integrating sustainability into corporate strategies. A former lawyer with Hebert Smith, Free Hills, she holds a Master of Science in Sustainability from the United Nations University and is fluent in Japanese. Arigatou gozaimasu. Okay, so we have Linda. I did the introduction, so thank you very much, Linda, for joining again. And Vedan, yes, thank you very much for joining again. And Mr. Luis Chica, Director of Financial Intelligence Unit of Colombia. Mr. Chica earned a public accountant degree from the University of Antigua and a specialist degree in tax legislation from Universidad Pontificia Bolivariana. Apologies for my pronunciation. Lo siento. He completed a master's in law with a tax emphasis at Externado de Columbia University. Before becoming general director of the UIAC, he was a professor and advisor at the University of Antigua. He also served as an accounting and financial advisor for the Human Communication Project of the Bogota Mayor's Office and has advised both public and private organizations on tax and accounting matters. So thank you very much. Thank you. And also we have Mr. Julio Pineda Laura. He is UIAC's Chief of International Affairs. Mr. Laura is a professional in finance and international relations with an MBA and emphasis in marketing. Postgraduate diploma in business and management, bilingual with more than 12 years of professional experience in the public-private sector and more than 10 years of academia and experience. UNITAR and we have been collaborating closely to combat financial crimes for the past years. So thank you very much. We are grateful for joining us. So I'll give the floor to you, Michael. Thank you.
All right, well, it's late in the day and we've been talking about AI for a few hours now. Anyone keep track of how many times AI has been mentioned today? Just want to look on your phone and see if AI can help us. But no, I want to make sure we keep it light, lively, but it's a serious topic. You know, it's AI. We think of AI for health and for education and for really good things, good for the world. It's also really powerful and important for fighting crime. And that's what we want to talk about here and diving deep with some experts to talk about that. So you can see the breadth of how AI gets used per the great conversation this morning. Thank you. And so we'll carry this on, but please feel free to ask questions along the way. Again, it's the end of the day. This is a culmination. We have to be at least as lively and entertaining as the last panel, so no pressure. But no, let's get started. I have really 5 questions and I'll just preview them really quickly. One is on key challenges of using AI to combat financial crime. Second one around future of AI in this space. Third around partnerships. Fourth around ethics. And fifth around action steps, concrete things that can come out of it. All right, so kudos and help from Saloni in helping to formulate questions. Let's get started. So first one, key challenges. So challenges in detecting and preventing sophisticated financial crime, particularly digital money laundering, but any financial crime really. So we'd love to start with our partners from Colombia, who have great expertise and experience in this space, if you don't mind answering the first question.
Thank you, Michael. Buenas tardes a todos y todas. Mi nombre es Luis Eduardo Ginás, como lo dijeron, director de la Unidad de Inteligencia Financiera de Colombia. El contexto, digamos, donde nosotros nos movemos es básicamente el análisis financiero y lucha contra el crimen organizado, sobre todo con el tema de lavado de activos y financiamiento del terrorismo.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Luis Eduardo, and yes, I am the director at the FIP. In Colombia, we mainly do financial analysis and fight against financial crime, especially in the anti-money laundering area.
Las unidades de inteligencia financiera se congregan en el Grupo de Acción Financiera Internacional, que es donde se emiten algunas recomendaciones, los estándares internacionales para luchar contra, como les dije, el lavado de activos y el financiamiento del terrorismo. Y básicamente cada país tiene una unidad de inteligencia financiera. Colombia no es la sección. Y nos reunimos básicamente para poder generar políticas y recomendaciones en torno a poder consolidar los sistemas antilavado en cada país.
The FIUs, we meet at the Financial Action Group, and we usually meet with the objective to establish AML standards, norms, and policies. Each country has an FIU, and basically, yes, we do these standards in order to combat financial crime more effectively.
Con respecto a acciones que tienen que ver con la inteligencia artificial, nosotros venimos planteando 4 estrategias. Una de ellas es la gestión del conocimiento dentro de la unidad. La otra es la cooperación interinstitucional. Otra es un marco regulatorio moderno. Y también podríamos decir que un mejoramiento de la infraestructura tecnológica de la entidad.
With regards to AI, we have basically 4 strategies: knowledge management, interinstitutional cooperation, regulatory framework, and the improvement of the IT in this area.
Anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thing about the challenges is that we are facing them every single day, new things. I was talking to someone yesterday and this week that our generation faced so many challenges. Internet first, then social networks, and then AI, right, which is here to stay. So one of the things that we keep saying is that we need to train our staff, right? Is that the training is, I think, the base of everything to get to know what we are chasing. Right? In this business, crime is always running. We are walking and falling, right? Because we don't know exactly what we are looking for at the beginning. So that's why training is always, getting some advantage for us. That's why training is really important for us. Try to train cryptocurrencies, blockchain, this decentralized finance platform that we should know more that we know already. So I think this is one of the main aspects. All the things that to try to regulation to try to fit what the standard said. I don't know if you are familiar with the Financial Action Task Force, the 40 recommendations that say, and one of the things that say we have to get the regulation to try to chase virtual assets and new technology, and we don't have it. countries in the region, we don't use, because I'm saying 5 or 6 years ago, we don't used to have this topic before that. That's why we are still learning, but we need to do it fast. That's why other thing that we need to do that in Colombia mostly, because we know the problem, but we don't have the regulation to know. So there's something also that we can do, trying to get that challenge done.
It makes me think of, I've done some work in cybersecurity, and it's like the criminals are always a step ahead, and then you catch up, and then they get ahead, and you have to keep your staff trained to be able to try to combat it. But it's difficult to try to be proactively ahead of the crimes and stop them.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. Great. Other thoughts on this one? Challenges in the financial space?
Definitely. I think what you said is something what recently the Indian Prime Minister also said about cybersecurity. So drawing the similarities there is very crucial. That this understanding has reached that the negative side is always ahead. And where I think the positive side needs to upgrade themselves is that the understanding of the possibilities of technology. Once that reaches the positive side, they understand what is possible from a negative angle, so you can preempt these attacks by really upgrading your defense before they actually happen. And that's a bigger global sort of call to really understand, share knowledge, share crimes, integrate those databases so that everything speaks to each other. So a crime that's happened in a remote place in, let's say, Africa, that's recognized globally immediately when it happens, kind of like zero-day errors, which are upgraded immediately in cybersecurity. This is something that can really channelize expertise globally and ensure they're able to do it. And a second angle, which I feel is very crucial, is bringing AI to the detection, because we understand our problems. Once AI understands our problems, it can actually detect it much faster and let us know beforehand that this is a likely time for this to happen because of certain external factors or data sets that predict that sort of behavior. And that can help us prevent the crime itself rather than it happening and us detecting it after. But bringing the right technologies in as a holistic sort of transformation is crucial. Like we mentioned in the morning, in each and every aspect, but in financial crimes and bigger problems, it's even more important right now.
Yes, Joanna.
Yeah, just piggybacking off that, I think one of the other challenges is that field within financial institutions is heavily compliance based. It's based on both international and domestic regulation. And so in that way, it can be a little reactive in terms of, Jay mentioned earlier, what is the question that's being asked, right? What we're looking for through the use of these systems is often what has been regulated for, right? But there's limitations to that. If we look at sanctions, compliance, there's a limited list of countries that are on a sanctions list. If we're looking at AML, we're looking for specific wrongs, right? And in the financial institutions context, I find that there can be a bit of a disconnect between the teams that are responsible for AML, anti-money laundering, and these sorts of issues, and the sustainability team, who's looking for risks embedded in transactions and client relationships that give rise to risk to people. So connection to sometimes, for example, serious human rights impacts, but though they haven't been legislated for in a financial crimes context or an AML context. And so for the financial institution, I think a challenge is ensuring cohesion between these two parts of the shop that are looking at financial crimes, anti-money laundering, and that are also looking at sustainability, human rights, impacts associated with their financing, and making sure that knowledge is shared and that the process is cohesive.
It makes me think in terms of training the staff, to your point, how you keep up with it. It may tie back to some of the themes we were talking about earlier, which, I was just taking notes from earlier today on what would we do to start teaching people about this? And it seemed like some of the themes, and you please tell us if you're training people on this as well, but the use of data analytics and the critical thinking piece, being able to then make decisions out of it and problem solve to get to the core problem, to know what kind of questions to feed AI, but then be able to analyze the data out of it to come to solutions. Or is that a place where your training has needed to go as you've started to use AI?
Nosotros, en el caso de Colombia, hemos comenzado a trabajar, digamos, con instituciones como UNITAR para poder implementar una de las estrategias que es la gestión del conocimiento, poder capacitar masivamente, lo que comentaba la compañera de panel, a personas que entiendan y conozcan de este problema de poder detectar, de poder entender, digamos, las diferentes formas con que el crimen organizado utiliza maneras sofisticadas lavar dinero. Sí.
In Colombia, we have begun working with UNITAR, for instance, on knowledge management to train people to understand and detect effectively the different forms in which crime uses sophisticated money laundering schemes.
Y estamos construyendo una plataforma de entrenamiento para poder masivamente capacitar a todos los oficiales de cumplimiento del país de manera gratuita y que podamos nosotros tener un diálogo con estos oficiales de cumplimiento y poder tener una herramienta que también pueda ser capaz que sirva de modelo para otras regiones del mundo y
Yes, right now we are developing a platform, a training platform to train compliance officers in the country and establish basically a dialogue with them. This will also serve a tool to train massively and be innovative in the region.
Y por último, es importante poder trabajar de manera mancomunada con otras organizaciones como puede ser la Fiscalía y también los jueces para poder llegar a feliz término de que las investigaciones o los análisis que puedan hacer las unidades de inteligencia financiera se puedan judicializar, digamos, a la final.
Lastly, it is important as well to work with other governmental organizations, such as the Attorney General and judges, so that these processes, they can have impeachments, legal repercussions.
Prosecutor.
Prosecutor.
Yeah.
Great.
And other things that I would like to say, we create in situ algorithms, right? And these algorithms try to match where we think crime is going, right? And also we have courses inside to try to teach our own analysts about what we think they're gonna face in the future, right? That's where we have really powerful AI-based systems. We have a strong algorithm, as what I just said, to try to figure out what would be the best way to match those standards, which are all the time are really high. Another thing is to try to create a culture of compliance, right? If people are not used to do that, right? They also, our analysts, when they receive the information, sorry to say, some of the time is rubbish, right? So it's not good to be an analyst. And sometimes we have to go back and try to ask, what do you mean with that information? I don't know. It takes 20 days, 30 days, 40 days. So it's a long time. And meanwhile, crime is, developing. It's going to somewhere else and we don't know. Because we want to get the guy to them. Right? That's why algorithms are going to help us go faster and try to, reach that objective better or at least than before.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a perfect lead into the next question about future of AI over the next 5 to 10 years. It sounds like your platform will help bring people and train them to get up to speed on crime, but even get to that proactive, predictive area. Is that the goal? How do you see AI really working in the future?
Yeah, of course. This is a platform that we're working with UNITAR that is not just planned to be last until the project ends. It's supposed to be to last forever. I mean, it's never going to last because as we evolve, the crime, as I said before, evolves as well. So we have to reach those standards and see what's going on. The FAST that I said at the beginning, this organization, with the recommendation, that's what they do. All the time they are analyzing new typologies and see what they can add to the last typology that I had before. And it changes all the time. Every single year, they tell us in the world, they tell us what has changed in the world about something. This recommendation, which is the 15th or new technologies, we need now to register, to supervise. You need somebody who's going to be after those people that have cryptocurrencies, and before we didn't have that. So we need, as I said, a regulatory body that will help us to tell us how we can, reach those standards, but also try to figure out the best way with other agencies to try to help us all together. This is not just a job of a country or a region. It's about everyone. The crime unit goes everywhere without any regulation. I think.
I do. I've been doing a project in Dubai. And the Dubai International Financial Center really looked at the fact that many of the financial institutions in Dubai did not have enough fintech, AI being a piece of it, they just didn't have it. So DIFC created its own accelerator, a government accelerator, to attract startups in fintech to Dubai, to then also, the government also helped those fintechs match up with their financial institutions so that they could upgrade their own technology. So one of the first ones they worked on was know your customer. So they did the Dubai, they had this government accelerator run around the world to find out where are the best know your customer startups, and then attracted some of those to come to Dubai. And then the government decided they would have an organization to help facilitate all the financial institutions adopt those technologies and know your customer into the banks, into the insurance companies, as a way of building some basic capabilities that were necessary to, the basics to make sure you know who you're actually working with. Because the banks and the insurance companies were behind in actually having access to those capabilities. And a lot of those are AI companies. And so I think that once they got the startups, they picked a couple in particular to come, a number of the banks got together and agreed on the standards. So they now all have the same standards, and they've also upgraded their own capability to use AI in their own institutions so that they know who the customers are. And they're also doing it so much faster. I gather, I'm not going to get the numbers right, so maybe it took you, if you were a medium-sized business and you went to Dubai, it might taken you a month or two to get what you needed to get done. Now it happens in a matter of a day or two. So that all of the financial institutions were really excited to do it because they could onboard customers faster, know who the customers were in a way that then they could reduce crime. And so I see a number of governments, I think Singapore did a rather similar thing, attracted some startups to come. You have your own startups in Colombia, some very good ones, and you, the government, played the role of helping do the matching and getting the banks to adopt, to use work with these startups to actually have the capabilities inside that were necessary, because their banks just didn't have those capabilities.
It's called customer due diligence.
Yes, right. But you have to do it, but I guess even in Dubai, the financial institutions didn't have the latest and greatest in terms of AI, et cetera, to know your customer. So the government helped them get access to those capabilities. And now, that's just the basic you need to have in place. And they saw that many of their institutions didn't have cutting edge sort of technology in that space.
That's right.
Any other thoughts, comments?
So what I was thinking is that, sorry, there are actually a lot of new technologies coming. With every innovation, there are new risks. The risks we have today will not be the risks that are there tomorrow. So this is a continuous improvement and continuous sort of battle. And what can really take us ahead is predicting and planning. Only if we have the best technology currently applied, not older technology, then only are we abreast and ahead. And if generative AI can generate text that we want, we can also start training specific AI to generate futuristic attacks based on current attacks to ensure we are ready for attacks that even the negative community does not know. And that will kind of help us upgrade our armor and defenses, kind of like the Israel dome system, which they built before knowing that drones would start coming and attacking. They had the system ready, that when it happened, it was prepared for. And that sort of predictive intelligence is what is needed at scale. And essentially not relying on the tech to happen, but ensuring our defenses are up to date with regular checks, balances, and everything put into place to ensure growth.
Yeah, that gets at the, maybe a follow-on question, which is what excites you most about AI in this space? Sounds like that predictive nature of being able to catch crime in advance. For you, I just wanted to ask everyone else, is there anything else that really excites you in this space? Is it the speed, the efficiency, the perhaps the volume of criminals you can catch that you didn't catch before? You know, what's most inspirational and exciting in this space with AI?
This is what we have found out is that it will help us to get hidden patterns that we didn't see before. We will not be able. So they are grouping transactions, for example, in order to see what's going on in a specific target. Right? When we try to, it's like a market. Right? We need to see where our product is going to be before. So we target the market and then we create a product or service that we know is going to fit that market. That's why when we know we will use artificial intelligence, I know it will create a space where we can see more clearly where we should see that and we are not seeing today, right? In this huge forest, the huge jungle of a lot of trees, we need to see where is that small one that is growing up. That we don't see it now, so we're going to target where we should be doing, or should we see it.
Mm-hmm. Maybe shifting gears to talk about partnerships. You mentioned the Attorney General, the prosecutors. Are there other collaborators in this space as we look at this problem, either in Colombia or globally? You know, who else should be the partners or collaborators in this space for it to be optimized?
Digamos que es importante que pueda haber un entendimiento entre las diferentes entidades, que pueda existir también capacitación suficiente para los servidores de esas entidades, porque se entiende que el crimen no solamente es nacional, sino que trasciende las fronteras y que en la medida que haya cooperación no solamente interinstitucional, sino internacional, con muchas entidades, podremos nosotros combatir eficazmente el crimen.
Let's say that it is important to have an understanding between entities. However, it is also important to have international understanding and exchanges, because crime has no borders.
Colombia, un dato, ¿no? Colombia es el cuarto país de Latinoamérica donde más operaciones se hacen a través de billeteras virtuales, exchange. Lo que hemos notado es que a través de las billeteras virtuales se están produciendo fenómenos de lavado de activos. Como Colombia, que carece de infraestructura tecnológica, puede combatir esto. Entonces es ahí donde se necesita, digamos, el apoyo internacional también para poder combatir no solamente el fenómeno en el país, sino también el fenómeno fuera del país.
So Colombia is the fourth country that is doing digital exchanges, money exchanges. And with this, we can see a possibility of having money laundering cases. So Colombia, that lacks the IT infrastructure, it is important for us to have cooperation in this sense.
Creemos que a través de la inteligencia artificial se puede hacer un monitoreo de las transacciones financieras, no solamente en Colombia, sino también desde donde se producen estas transacciones financieras. Se puede estudiar, digamos, no solamente los sectores de la economía, sino también individualizando a las personas y a las transacciones financieras que se creen sospechosas o inusuales a través de la inteligencia artificial para poder detectar fenómenos de lavado de activos.
With AI, we can do monitoring of these financial transactions, not only in Colombia, the recipient country, but also from the origin country of the transaction. This can be identified by sector, but also it can be identified by person. And with this, we can more effectively detect money laundering cases.
Good. So it sounds like the UN has a role and UNITAR has played an important role for you. Do you see the UN as being a key partner in all this?
Es muy importante, digamos, el apoyo que se puedan tener no solamente Colombia, sino los demás países en la lucha contra el flagelo de narcotráfico, corrupción, extorsión. Y creo que es importante que las instituciones transnacionales se puedan unir para este propósito, para la lucha contra estos crímenes. Creo que las Naciones Unidas, con la que hemos trabajado de la mano, no solamente en el tema pedagógico de educación, sino también en otros temas, por ejemplo, el fortalecimiento de los derechos humanos en el país, nos pueden ayudar a poder construir una estrategia multinacional para que los países puedan, digamos, sacar unas políticas comunes para enfrentar estos fenómenos.
It's really important to have the support to Colombia, but also other countries in the area of trafficking and corruption. We should unite to fight against this money laundering. We have, of course, worked with the UN. It's really important in the area of capacity building, but also we have worked in the area of human rights. And this is really important so that countries can adopt similar common policies.
Question left side? No? Okay. Cool.
No, not so particularly here, but I have one question about actually the public-private interface, because in order to detect and prevent financial crime, there's obviously, the private sector is involved, there's almost a bank involved, but there are also other sectors involved, law firms, accounting firms, art dealers. So there's a huge private sector universe who contributes, who's in a position to prevent or enable crime. And I think my question is in how far technology, AI can help with the public-private interface, because I think we need some avenues, some data avenues and infrastructure for the public and private sectors to exchange intelligence and information to prevent financial crime more efficiently. And that's, as far as I know, is a challenge right now. And the private sector is actually one of the key partners. It's a tricky one, but I think it's one of the key partners also in preventing and detecting crime.
Such a good point, an important point. I think maybe turning it to actually, the next question gets into ethics, but it works a lot with the private sector in relation to this whole effort and use of AI and financial crime. So maybe we'll have Ashley answer your question. But great point.
Yes, absolutely. And those structures are set up, right? There's mandatory information sharing in most jurisdictions between a bank who has certain things that they have to be checking for. And when they are discovered, red flagged, they have to be reported to a central authority. That's the setup in most countries. That fails sometimes, and sometimes spectacularly so. We had this in my own country of Australia, where we had a huge scandal with transactions that were tracked and traced to a pedophilia ring. And that was missed by a bank. And the structures were there, but the process was not being followed, was the issue. Now, the question there is, where does AI come in? Is it a human error? Is it a lack of will? Is it a lack of, or is it rather something that AI can help with by managing scale, by detecting patterns, etc.? And I don't know in that case, and in different cases, there's a different answer to that, right? Whether it's just a lack of resources, if it's the challenge of scale, or in other cases, the problem is a lot more insidious and it's a lack of will. And in that case, all the AI in the world doesn't necessarily help with that, right? So it's a complex issue. But for sure, as my fellow panelists have said, you know, AML, anti-money laundering, financial crimes tracking, it's a challenge of scale. And AI is good at managing scale. It's a challenge of pattern recognition, and AI is good at managing pattern recognition. So we have to, I think this is an area where we would be foolish to ignore the incredible potential benefits that AI can bring. But the corollary there is that there is a huge risk of impacts from the use of the AI that we need to be aware of. So Nikhil started the day off talking about some kind of doomsday scenarios and AI. But before we even get there, we already have some very extant, some very real issues that AI has brought about by embedding, and we talked about that a little bit, by embedding existing human biases. Now you might think, well, if AI is simply embedding existing human biases, then it's a zero-sum problem, right? But the thing is, AI is doing it at scale. AI can embed those biases at an incredible scale. And we're also in a context where AI brings about huge incentives from a profit perspective. This is a time of revolution. If you get it on the ground floor, there's an awful lot of money to be made. So we are in a very delicate place where you have an incredible vulnerability on our part to scale, and a vulnerability to different incentives that might be incentivizing actors, bad actors in the public and private space, potentially, to take advantage of this. So what I want to talk about in this context is the importance of checks and balances. Because I think we gloss over that a little bit sometimes. We sort of say, well, yes, you know, there are potential risks associated with AI, but the government will regulate, right? But or AI will solve the problems of AI. But the reality is we have precedent in the human world for a lot of these things. These are not new problems. They're just at scale. But they're at scale, it has incredible impact. So for example, we know, someone said earlier, you know, data is oil, right? That's actually a very helpful thought experiment, because when, you know, countries in the global south discovered oil, you know, yes, there was an opportunity to say, we're going to leave it in the ground, we're going to take our time, we're going to develop it ourselves, we're going to keep the profits where we are. But you had governments that were under incredible pressure, resource pressure, right? We all know the story of oil, incredible resource pressure. We had some other governments who were looking for short-term gain, sometimes inappropriate short-term gain. There are so many other factors that influence what could be a utopian scenario. Humans are not necessarily very good at thinking long-term and eschewing short-term gain. So, you know, a thought line along the lines of, well, we can just have people benefit from it locally, have people benefit from it, you know, eschew short-term gain, is ignoring in many ways a pattern that we know about humans, right? We have to use these things that we already know. We know humans think in a biased way. We will embed that into our systems if we don't have the right checks and balances. Banks were using postcodes as an indicator of risk in loans, right? To set interest rates, to deny or approve loans. Many of us know about this problem. Those postcodes were associated with certain ethnic groups. So in the end, what was happening was this further entrenched embedding of bias, that if you were from a certain ethnic group in a certain area, you were going to have a harder time accessing finance. Amazon was looking at where to set up prime delivery services. They were looking at, well, who uses it more? Policing, predictive policing, all of those applications of AI, if not very carefully scrutinized, can end up embedding and amplifying exponentially existing biases, where certain racial groups get over-policed, certain racial ethnic groups get underfunded, certain racial ethnic groups don't have access to services. So we have to keep that in mind. A lot of the time as well, when we're talking about AI, we're making these assumptions about an enabling environment for its use that simply aren't true, right? Some of the scenarios we were talking about earlier where AI could be used, requires democracy, it requires functioning institutions, it requires a lack of corruption, it requires regulation. But we know all of these things currently are not working as they should in many places. So we have to be very, very careful about utopian scenarios that suggest that AI can come into this level playing field. We don't have a level playing field. In the world at the moment, we have two crises, climate and inequalities, and inequality is only increasing. So when we talk about job losses through AI, we have to think about the kind of jobs that are being created. These are not equal jobs. The people that have access to these types of highly skilled jobs are not the same people that have been driving trucks. So my point is that when we think about the applications of AI, we have to be very, very careful about who benefits, who loses, what biases are being entrenched, and what are our own fallibility as humans. We need transparency in the way that the systems work. And we need to be very, very aware of the human fallibility. We have research that shows us that if someone wears a white coat and tells us something, we are more likely to believe it. I think that if an AI model says, I've analyzed the world's data and this is the answer, we are more inclined to believe it. We are fallible, we are human. So these checks and balances, transparency is so important. And so what I think when we get to this question of ethics, we have, as much as we have the problems already, we're aware of where our fallibility is, we also have some of the solutions already available to us. And I don't think, I work with banks every day, and I don't think at this point we are going to get to a place where anyone in government or within the financial institutions are going to have as much cutting edge knowledge as somebody working in AI full time. But they're paralyzed by this fear, many financial institutions. They think, well, we can't go and ask difficult questions of our clients because we don't know enough about this, right? But what do we know enough about? We know enough about what makes good systems. We know enough about checks and balances. We know enough about the need for transparency. We know enough about the need for good governance. And governance that is diverse and governance that is able to operate in an environment of transparency. And we know about how important stakeholder engagement is when we're setting up these systems. We heard about systems that AI projects and other projects that are being set up without enough data from communities outside of those creating them. So when we're developing these systems, there needs to be engagement with stakeholders who will be affected by them to get those diverse viewpoints. So the kind of things we can be asking of AI developers, we know. How's the governance? How's the transparency? Which stakeholders are involved? Who's benefiting? These, to Jay's point, these are the questions that we need to be asking, because the scale and the profit incentives right now are at that level of magnitude that the risks are very, very high. But we have a wonderful opportunity in various areas in healthcare, in financial crime prevention and detection, that we cannot ignore this incredible opportunity, but it needs to happen with very, very serious checks and balances.
The reactions around ethics?
Pues agregar al comentario que hay una línea muy delgada en poder a través de las unidades financieras procesar millones de datos que vienen del sector financiero fundamentalmente y tener cómo centralizar, cómo poder procesar esa información sin tener que impactar, digamos, los derechos de las personas en su habeas data, digamos, en el manejo reservado de la información. Entonces, existe ahí una línea muy delgada en la inteligencia artificial, porque se podrían vulnerar algunos derechos al momento de poder procesar esos datos. Y por eso es importante tener un marco regulatorio internacional que permita hacer esa diferenciación donde puede actuar la unidad de inteligencia financiera y en donde pueden los particulares poder procesar poder procesar la información sin poder vulnerar derechos humanos.
To add to the comment, there is a small difference in processing data from the financial sector without having a negative impact on the management of data. So because you can vulnerate, you can damage people. That's why it is so important to have a regulatory framework that is international, where FIUs can act in this field.
Very important. Yeah, I think that point and Ashley's points are so important in the world today. You know, just putting my tech hat on, I think back to my history in Intel, Microsoft, and with other companies. There was a shift with data being the new oil, where data was seen as a way to profile what you like and how to push advertisements to you. And big companies are doing that. You know, they're very interested. That's why Facebook is free, because they're learning about you. Your cell phone company's learning about you. Amazon's learning what you like to buy. And so they're all looking to gather this profile data. So that's why I think these data sets are so valuable, and people are going to be fighting over these data sets because they can be used for good. Maybe you don't mind the preference of having things that you like, you know, pushed to you for advertisements, but they can also be used for bad for big companies, you know, that are trying to make money and exploit, but also other bad actors that want to do even worse with the data, financial crimes or you know, worse things against you personally. So this is it's kind of a pivotal point right now, and it's you know, we were talking earlier. It's like who's going to step up and govern this? And you know, lots of kudos to the Columbia team for what you've put in place, because that's a step that we need in the world for all countries.
Let's wake everybody up.
So anyway, I think AI can be a huge benefit on the positive side, healthcare, education, and everything we've talked about today. But there is this darker side that we really need to know about, because it will happen. To Ashley's point, there's so much money to be made, and everyone knows it with the use of AI right now. And data is the oil, for good or for bad, that we all now are agents in this room to try to influence people and make a difference. So, you know, any other thoughts on maybe what we do now is talk about action steps, like what concretely should be done next. The Columbia model, I think, is a very good one, and kudos to UNITAR for helping, you know, be a partner in this space. And more of that's needed. But any other concrete action steps out of this session, based on the dialogue and everything we've talked about?
Pues, digamos que Colombia se viene preparando para capacitar a nuestros oficiales de cumplimiento, y por eso es importante este matrimonio entre UNITAR, INL y la UIAF, para poder fortalecer esos conocimientos de las personas, que entiendan el flagelo, que entiendan de administración de riesgos de lavado de activos, pero que también se vayan introduciendo en temas novedosos como los proveedores de servicios de activos virtuales, que son toda esta cantidad de operaciones que se hacen en las redes, que se hacen en la intranet. Poder fortalecer ese conocimiento es fundamental, pero también avanzar en poder tener como unidad de inteligencia financiera la capacidad de poder administrar, digamos, mucha información, muchas bases de datos que nos permitan centralizar esa información, pero también gobernarla de una manera responsable, sin vulnerar los derechos humanos, y que también las unidades de inteligencia financiera del mundo se pongan de acuerdo para crear un marco normativo donde se establezcan unos estándares para poder administrar estas bases de datos, pero también poder luchar contra lo que hemos denominado los beneficiarios finales de los negocios que se manejan en la web. Así que hay unos retos muy importantes. Colombia ha avanzado en esto, en poder tener un fortalecimiento también tecnológico, que es fundamental. Y también pues poder trabajar cooperadamente, digamos, con otras jurisdicciones del mundo para poder intercambiar información casi que en tiempo real. Y eso es un reto pues muy importante.
Well, yes, Colombia is preparing to train compliance officers. That's why it's really important our relationship with UNITAR and the Department of Defense of the United States. And this will help us, will help our citizens to understand topics like money laundering, corruption, financial crime, but as well new, relevant, and sophisticated topics such as virtual assets and the transactions that are made digitally. It is also important to have the capacity for FIUs to work with a lot of data, many data sets, without harming human rights. As well, as a last point, it is important to have a normative framework, as I said before, to administer these data sets and as well the financial benefit of transactions made online.
Beneficial ownership.
Beneficial ownership. Yes, and have cooperation with other jurisdictions.
We eat information. We live for that, right? And we rather be fat than think scale. We like to eat a lot of information. That's why in the past 2 years we've been having this relationship of agreements with public sector, also with private sector to try to get those databases to us. It's been a really hard job, right? So that's why it's as you said, this is not just a public problem, it's also a private situation that we need to assess. One of the things that I was about to say is that something that is really like on the line of trying to affect the public or try to be benefited by that, by the information, is try to get the predictions, right? Predictions, risk analytics, for example. This is not something just for witches, right, or wizards. It's something that we can do, right? Trying to anticipate those problems, but as the director said, is we have to assess how far we can go, right? Because we can see that maybe this risk analytics will show us a problem that somebody had in the past, based in historical patterns, right? But it's not doing now. But so we have to know how to analyze the information, each one of them, right? Not analyze it, just as a bunch of people. That's why artificial intelligence, I think, will help us to try to identify those patterns that are coming from the past, but also are doing it today, right? Quickly, in a very best way.
Michael.
Oh, yes, please. Thank you so much. This is a little testimony. Before I appointed the diplomat, I was appointed to be Director General fighting against money laundering in all the countries of ECOWAS. But there was a challenge internally in my country. Because in 2019, there was a challenge in my country, internally in my country, because I was hold two directions. Direction in charge of audit, quality assurance, and director in charge of fighting corruption. What makes a difference between me and my challenge? My colleagues who are, it was a concours exam, international exam. I have demonstrated that there is a huge link between corruption and money laundering. And so we can't fight against money laundering if we don't know the curricula of corruption. And corruption contains all definitions. Fraud, corruption is under all those issues. So you are not, if to fight the corruption, there's 3 parameters: prevention, renseignement, intelligence, and investigation. And all of them are sit on 7 pillars. This is not the time to develop those 7 pillars. But all of this is linked on the human being. I think people are speaking about ethic. So what I was obliged to focus my job internet, like audit and anti-corruption director. So the second who came after me was called to be director of Jabba, Madam of Nigeria, you know Jabba, financial there. So the huge problem is when I was after 2023, I'm appointed to be a diplomatic. I was for fighting corruption. It was I have a challenge there. J'avais un défi because at that day all our system was dematerialized, and to fight against corruption with material. It was difficult to me, and I called the attention of the policy to train us in fighting against corruption, auditing the material system. They was now called people they are now trained, there was training for I left. But here I discovered that if our countries, you know how to use intelligence artificial. Please, we are going to push those corruption, push money laundering. So I think this is the opportunity to congratulate you all. And I'm happy to be here. It's like, I don't know how to say to you, God bless you.
So what I'd like to add to what he's saying is the foundations of governments, the foundations of society and civilization were built at a time when there was no AI. And now AI is there. And AI is like a broader reset. Our way of thinking, our way of doing, and our way of operating things is not just to add one and kind of operate like what we did with tech. It is kind of a bigger change that can be orchestrated now with the change of systems. When industries are changing, when ways of working are changing, then our entire imagination of how the world should be can also change. And that could be something that can be championed with this initiative. Of course, there'll be problems in ethics, which are human-driven. There will be problems in other fields, but it is human to combat the problems as well. And if we collectively work as a group, as countries, and bring more and more people on the AI evaluation bandwagon, understanding bandwagon, and they have knowledge to innovate, then we have choice on which algorithm to use, which not to use. And I'm pretty sure that every algorithm will not be biased, every person will not be negative, and every individual will not have the same motivations as some. So governing AI, saying that it's biased or it's ethical, is all that we are building. And as long as more people build and we have options and more people compete, we are collectively able to decide what's best for all of us and move the world forward. So this is a very big opportunity. In the history of existence, we have never had an opportunity so big that can really transform the world. And transforming the world can either be the role of a few people or it can be the role of everyone. And if we want a world that's good to everyone, and I urge you all to participate and start building, start creating, because now is the time. The support you will get globally, the support you'll get from a lot of different institutions, you will get now, because there's a need, there's a shortage of AI talent, there's a shortage of AI people, and there's a shortage of AI solutions, and everyone needs them. So now is the time to really make up your mind, make up your strategy, and as governance, start really playing AI as a key part of your thinking. We're not saying you have to use it. The idea is to have it in your mind, that consider it and understand what it can do. Whether you apply it or not is your decision, but not having the technology to apply it is actually a loss. So we're talking about really having that technological capability, having those solutions, but choosing not to use them, rather than not having the technology at all.
Bueno, por último, agregar que siempre he dicho que no existiría narcotráfico si no hubiera corrupción. Digamos, narcotráfico existe porque hay corrupción y eso hay que entenderlo como un problema, digamos, estructural de la sociedad colombiana. Y una de las herramientas para luchar contra la corrupción es la inteligencia financiera, pero también una herramienta de la inteligencia financiera puede ser la inteligencia artificial, en donde, por ejemplo, con herramientas como la que estamos construyendo con UNITAR, puede crear la capacidad de capacitar a personas para que entiendan estos fenómenos, para que entiendan que si hay corrupción o hay lavado de dinero, vamos a tener una economía que no va a ser sana. Posiblemente vulneremos a nuestro sistema financiero y eso va a generar, digamos, complicaciones en los países. Entonces creo que a través de la inteligencia financiera como una herramienta de nuestra entidad, digamos, o de las UIF de todo el mundo, podemos luchar contra el flagelo de la corrupción, pero también poder prevenir, digamos, muchos delitos que pasan producto de la sofisticación de las operaciones económicas de los países.
As a last point, I've always said that there would be no drug trafficking without corruption. One of the tools to fight against this is financial intelligence, but also artificial intelligence. With these tools, of course, you can train people to understand this phenomena. And with financial intelligence, we can really fight against corruption in one block.
The closing thoughts before I wrap it up?
I don't have a closing thought. I have a question. How much of this do you think is going undetected? I'm just trying to get at what, I'm sure there must be estimates and I don't, I read about cryptocurrencies, et cetera, but not that that's, but what is our sense of the scale of the problem? I just,
Colombia es un país donde tradicionalmente, digamos, se lava mucho dinero. Hablamos de que el 80-85% de las operaciones ilícitas no se detectan. Y eso más o menos representa un 10% del Producto Interno Bruto del país. Es decir, podemos estar hablando en dólares de 25.000 millones de dólares aproximadamente de operaciones ilícitas que no detectamos a través de la inteligencia financiera. Y eso es una cifra bastante astronómica y digamos muy preocupante. Por eso es importante poder establecer controles del efectivo, controles también en los contrabando, las importaciones, las exportaciones, para poder mejorar, digamos, estos guarismos.
Colombia, the amount of money laundering, the amount of illicit operations that are not detected is between 80 to 85%. So this represents 10% of the GDP, and in US dollars, this would be 25 millions. This is, of course, a big number. That's why it is important to make controls on physical money, on imports, on exports, etc.
AI has the scales. Yes, okay, thank you.
Just maybe the last question?
Yes, thank you. I have a question in terms of the topic today is that while the world is talking about money equals power, and of course, power is being concentrated in more and more hands. And AI companies, those into finance research, also get brought out. They're seen as gatekeepers for us, and in exchange for them letting to use their AI, it gives them our information. And AI collects more and more information about us in the name of transparency and, of course, efficiency. So we seem to be losing more and more privacy as we give more and more information away. So where does privacy come into fighting corruption, fighting financial corruption, especially when I go to my coffee shop and I can't even pay by card, I can't even pay by cash because they don't accept card in the name of efficiency and privacy. And also, what are your thoughts about, or society more cashless society?
No, I'm not the one.
I have thoughts, but
Yes.
for the technical side of that, I'm not the right person. I'll see that, but I think, right, that's another of the questions that we need to be asking, right? There's an element of being undetectable, which is important, that we don't necessarily appreciate as an Australian living in America, having lived in Japan, sitting in Switzerland. The need to sometimes be undetected. We don't quite appreciate that because we have democracy, because we're not fearful for our life, because we're not a human rights defender. You know, I'm getting a bit meta here, but I'll come back to the specifics. But, you know, when we look at autocratic societies, we look at dictatorships, etc. We look at the way the UN operates and we say we try not to get too involved in the domestic affairs of a country, because if the people need to change things, they'll rise up, right? The ability I would tell you now, the level of AI that we'll have very soon, the French Revolution would not have happened, right? Because the minute people start organizing, it's shut down. And you see that today in certain countries, you see that in parts of China. We mentioned that earlier, but we glossed over the fact that the massive human rights implications of databases of people's faces that it's happening now. It's happening right now in the name of fighting crime, and it's a political agenda. So massive implications for privacy. Certain technologies there are systems in place that certain technologies can't be sold to certain countries because we don't believe that they will respect privacy. That's the best case scenario, is privacy violation, through to arbitrary imprisonment, through to death, right? In certain countries, if you have, if the data privacy leak, that you access certain websites that show you to be part of the LGBTQ+ community, that can mean death in some countries, right? You know the countries I'm talking about. So the implications are massive, and the privacy concern is real. And certain groups of people have much heightened need to privacy than I can imagine in my day-to-day life, right? And human rights defenders, those who are working to try to fight against corruption, for example, are some of those people in very, very vulnerable positions. And so again, I come back to this point about, I fundamentally agree that AI, if appropriately used, can be a force for democratization, right? If more people, and I love the idea of not concentrating it, bringing it to farmers in India. I love the idea of that diversification and democratization. But the reality is that there's a profit incentive here, and it will concentrate. That's the trajectory of human private sector. We have more and more concentration. So that is a reality. We have to be aware of it. And these checks and balances about what products are being sold to which countries is extremely challenging, but absolutely essential. It gets wrapped up in politics. It gets wrapped up in trade wars. We have to keep a very fixed eye on the human rights implications, the right to privacy, etc., and keep a fixed eye on that and make decisions about where these technologies are sold, deployed, and have a lot of pressure on their use if we're going to have more good than harm to come out of it.
Definitely, and there are case studies about Pegasus being used to monitor your phone, what you're talking, what you're looking at is actually being used. But still, there has something at a global scale done. But that just speaks about knowledge and what people know and where they're going, which direction. So privacy definitely is a good concern. The future generation is something. Some people that want to put everything on Instagram, everything on Facebook, and then the deep fakes come and other things become very easy to make. So it's really important to understand the world you're living in. It is not the world of 20 years ago, not the world of 40 years ago. And until you don't understand it, you're not able to operate effectively in it. Of course, there'll be a regulation side, but then there's a self-regulation side as well. How should you behave as an independent agent in this atmosphere also plays a very crucial role. And knowing how your data can be used is very important. Like, for example, OpenAI used Scarlett Johansson's voice for their assistant without her knowledge because the data was in the internet, and then she sued them. So these are sort of things that are, if available on the internet, can be used very easily because these technologies exist and AI can code. So it shouldn't be the negative agents, the only people that are using it. Only if the positive agents start embracing AI, become one with AI, and start moving forward. I don't think there's a talent deficit in the people that can use AI, but as we start pushing boundaries, getting knowledge and technology to a certain level that we are able to make policy decisions by having this technology, seeing its use, evaluating it. Then only can we ensure the right use for everyone. And privacy definitely is a concern which governments will address, but personally, even you can take decisions to address it. Look at the cookies on your browser, look at how Google is kind of passing around data, and they are then selling it further to other companies. So there's bigger plays happening around you, but understanding that is crucial, and that's why education plays the biggest key role in this entire ecosystem. The world has changed and we need to change. If we don't, then the world will change us, which is something that is very crucial to start adapting, be a pioneer, and really understand. Because one thing someone asked me about the regulation aspect, should we restrict AI? What should we do? So one big answer to mine was, yes, you restrict it. How are you going to restrict the others? So if you're not doing it, someone else is, and that someone else's technology will get made and then reach you. So the best action right now is actually action. Making AI, making it be first, create it. The regulation will happen over time. And guiding the people, showing them the direction, making them, realize the vision and change. It's a process that we all are working on, trying to guide them. But from our side, I think the best action is action and doing AI and really progressing it forward and making our best decisions. Because regulation is not a one person's job, and it's not very easy for entire governments to be convinced and change their age-old policies. But the effort has started, so it will happen. There are people working in this direction to make it happen. We definitely need support from everyone to really create a bigger, better change. Cool. It's a good answer.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. More questions?
Thank you. Members of the Brooks Coalition have been trying to reduce it's all that. They have been working on creating a blockchain-based payment system that would allow them to trade internationally using currencies. And of course, with the members agreed to create this new system, rumors have it that they will announce this new system in their upcoming conference. This would naturally increase financial costs, given the decentralized nature of blockchain and AI being a central component of blockchain. So my question is, what regulatory frameworks or steps can be taken in such scenarios to prevent the increase of financial costs with such a large number of elements of members of this new system?
That's a very good question. Would anyone want to take that?
If I get right the question, we already deal with that in the region. Colombia will already deal with it. We have tracked transactions that are being paid by cryptocurrencies. These cashiers, these electronic cashiers, are located in a really, a long region in the jungle, in the middle of the jungle, and we know the transactions are being done, and people just withdraw the money in those electronic cashiers and pay the war inside the country, right? Pay illegal inside the country. They are, facing as a resources every single illegal activity that happens in Colombia. Right? So we know what it means to be using these channels for bad things, for criminals. Criminals are now even hackers. These people that used to live in the jungle, in the forest all the time, like they don't have any technology. They are hackers, right? These are the thing that we are facing today in the region and in the world, I think, because it's really hard to track these type of transactions. Now, with the USA Embassy, we're working to try to get a tool to try to prevent those scenarios, right? But not even then, with all the resources that they have, they're doing it, right? They have a lot of resources, a lot of techniques, a lot of technicians, a lot of resources, but they can't track every single activity because these wallets that are inside this world, sometimes they don't disappear or they hidden, right? So it's really hard to track all the money that goes behind it. There is a chain analysis, there is TRM labs, without these tools that are used for that, but they don't cover all the scenario. So there are the hidden wallets that is impossible to track, nowadays, at least as far as we know. So we face that and we know this is happening, but it's something that to be honest, we don't know how to face it. And Terry,
So it sounds like governance like that, needs to be put in place quickly if these countries are all coming together to create such a system. Yeah. Well, with that, maybe what we'll do is wrap up. I have just four key points to wrap up, see how these resonate with you. I think AI can be used as an application to fight financial crime. And kudos again to Colombia and UNITAR for helping lead the way in that space. This is a great place to see that a country like Colombia and UNITAR can partner up to be leaders in this area. I think a second point for me is the point about checks and balances. We need those in place now because, as you saw, the governance is going to take all of us. Government officials may only know this much about AI. You probably, having spent today with us, know more about AI than a lot of government officials around the world about AI. And yet everyone's looking to them for governance. And there's corruption. And they need to support businesses for economic development. So you get businesses coming in that want to make money that then push the limits that may become bad actors as well. So there's all that at play. They want to keep their position in politics, and so they have to play to companies sometimes or bad actors. The third point I would say is this point about education and how important it is. I think the positive aspects of education and making sure we talk about ethics and governance along the way, but getting more people involved in the positive aspects of AI to drive it forward. Otherwise, the negative actors will just take over the space, and human nature be to push for as much profit in as short a time as possible in any way possible, any way they can. And then probably back to you, I think the point was you are all now change agents in this space. So AI is a tool, and you're a superhero with the technology. So use your superhero powers for good and not evil. And when you see evil, call it out, and let's figure out how to go against it and fight it. Because now you're all change agents. So at Microsoft, we always said, oh, it's technology, it's a tool. That it's now enabling you to be a superhero. So use your power for good, not evil. So now that's all of you. With that, I'd like to thank the panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bit of a housekeeping announcement before we close the day. So, Leah.
First of all, thank you again for the wonderful discussion. It's amazing to see how we transition from societal resilience to also a very serious topic, which is combating financial crimes using the same tool, AI. So yeah, just sharing a piece of my thoughts. It was a great session. Thank you again. So a little bit of housekeeping reminders. We will be sending out certificates of participation for the entire event after the completion of a survey that will be also followed up after today, so tomorrow. Yes, and after this completion, we will be sending you virtual copies of the certificates of participation workshop and panel discussion. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Bea. Thank you so much. Now I'm thinking, once we get data from this survey, we will use a special assistant from AI to analyze and yes, but well, once again, thank you very much for all the speakers, all the participants and the UNITAR members for participating in this event. I learned a lot myself. And really, I feel that today, the purpose of today's meeting, this space was to discuss in details, in depth, pros and cons of artificial intelligence. And I am very proud, and congratulations to everyone. We did that. So pros and cons. And once again, coming back to one of the first points I mentioned, we really need to use AI for good, as Michael just said, to accelerate sustainable development goals, because we are significantly behind. So we need to use the power of AI this special assistant we have at our fingertip to achieve sustainable inclusive future. So once again, thank you very much. We hope to organize event like this to discuss hard questions and brainstorm. So thank you so much once again. Now, before we close, we move to Apeho. We have a group photo. So are we taking a photo here?
We'll have a photo with the second panelists first, and then we could all gather in the center for a group photo.